On SRB Radio with me, the Gabby Cabby, in association with Zany and Griffiths Clothing and supporting the Jeff Astle Foundation. Joining me today are two legends of the British game and subjects of my first and last football argument during my school days. It's Peter Withe and Brian Little. Fellas, how you doing? And welcome to BB Interviews.
To be here, interested to see how we're going to get on today. We do lots of things together over the years, and the only thing we never did was we play alongside each other too often, really, which would have been a nice thing. But no, it's great to be here and looking forward to it.
Well, let's start at playing together with each other. Once in a testimonial, you played against each other for Birmingham City and Aston Villa.
He'll know.
We played with each other
in a testimonial.
In his testimonial game, because he's finished his career.
Yeah.
And that was the only time that we played together.
Exactly, yeah.
And
but against Pete, you played against each other, you for Birmingham City and Brian for Aston Villa. Trust me, you did.
Okay.
Trust me.
I'll go
In fact, there was a corner that Chris Nicholl was going to get his head onto it and you intercepted it and it went back out for a Villa corner.
Okay.
100%.
Which year was that then?
1975-76
Well, it
season.
would be, yeah.
In fact, I
And
think
the
it was
score
the game
would-
that you scored the winning goal, Brian.
Yeah, Kenny Burns.
Yeah.
I took the ball. Well, I didn't even take the ball off him. He sort of lost the ball right on the edge of the box.
Yeah.
And a side footer didn't. If Peter played that game. Well, I definitely played that game. So you might remember whether you played that game as well. But yeah. I often have a little look at that every now and again just to remind myself.
Do you reminisce much about the good old days? Because we're going to talk about that. I also want to go back to the beginning of your careers because your careers were very different in how they started. Pete, you at 1971 were playing for Southport and you were on the docks at Liverpool, is that correct? And Brian, you'd just come down from Newcastle as an apprentice and made your debut at age 17 for Aston Villa. So,
well, that I mean, that in itself for me was a sort of a massive thing. You know, at 15-year-old, I leave home, and you know, I was very quiet.
Yeah.
Didn't know a thing about anything at the time. I was living in a place called Peterlee, which is in County Durham. Born in Newcastle, but I lived in a little sort of mining town. Left home at 15. Fortunately, I was in digs with a lad who looked after me, a lad called Roy Stark, who was the same age as me, but was more of a man than I was. You know, I mean, he was big and strong, and I was sort of small and very quiet. To think that 2 years on from there, I'd changed completely, and I was playing in the first team was just incredible, really. Yeah. So, I think leaving home at 15 was something I always wanted to do. I don't know why, but I mean, I'd never even cleaned my own shoes by the time I was 15. So I left home and was then thrown into the world of football, which was a real eye-opener, to be honest.
Now, Pete, your first journeys into football, really different. In fact, your journey into the professional game was via South Africa and America, and then Wolverhampton Wanderers in 1973, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, because I started, I was playing in Liverpool for 3 teams. So I played on a Wednesday in the Business House League. I played on a Saturday for the Wakes team, who I couldn't get a game for. And then I played on a Sunday for the Sunday team.
Yeah.
The Saturday team, I used to play, I ended up playing in goal because we didn't have a goalkeeper. So I said, I'll play in goal. And then on the Wednesday, I used to play left midfield. And on the Sunday I used to play left wing, so I played in all the positions, as it were, until I got to Southport, and then I started sort of professional at Southport. In fact, the day I signed my first professional contract was the day my son was born, Jason, on 16th of August 1971. I actually signed a professional contract. Didn't last very long, but it was there. And then went via Preston, Barrow, South Africa, and then Wolves.
In 1973, you played for 3 different teams, didn't you?
Yes.
Port Elizabeth being one of them.
Yeah.
How was that time briefly in South Africa for you? Because there was apartheid going on. There was, I don't think South Africa could play Test cricket, but there were a number of footballers, certainly in the 50s. I think Peter Franklin played over there as well. How did you figure with South Africa?
Well, South Africa was one of them places that everyone was sort of going to play, like Johnny Haynes was playing in South Africa when I went there. But every team had at least 4 or 5 players, ex-players. So
Yeah.
Terry Wharton was playing out there, ex-Wolves.
Yeah.
So we had loads. We had Tony Coleman. We had them sort of players, and then other players went out. George Easton was playing out there in South Africa. So there was a lot of players playing. There was apartheid at the time.
Yeah.
We as Brits, as it were trying to just do what we do and just ignore apartheid.
Yeah.
Just try and get on with people the same way as what we got on with people all over the world. So that was difficult. Funnily enough, my wife was saying that she took Jason to a park once because a lot of the mothers worked out there and the fathers worked out there. So the children were looked after by nannies.
Yeah.
But they all had to sit together and she had to sit on her own. She couldn't go and sit with them because you could be arrested for that sort of thing over there. So it was difficult, but it was amazing how sort of you sort of got on with it.
Yeah.
And I was just a young 20-year-old who just wanted. I was the youngest player in the team, both teams. And I always remember there was the lad. I went to Port Elizabeth, and the manager who signed me, when I landed, he was taken off on a plane flying back to the UK.
Okay.
So Billy Haydock, his name was. He
Yeah.
played with me at Southport. So he was flying back. So I had him as a manager. Then I had another manager. Then I had another manager. This is all in one season, by the way.
Sounds like the Premier League now, doesn't it?
And then I had a fella called Matt Crowe.
Okay.
And Matt Crowe used to play for Norwich. And I always remember him. We were playing against Durban, and they were playing me in midfield because I could run. And I wasn't scoring goals at the time. The only club in my career that I wasn't scoring goals for. So I played in midfield. And I always remember trying to nick this ball. One of the players was coming through and I missed time. He sort of put his leg up a bit higher, and then all I could hear was this manager from the side, Matt Crowe, shouting and screaming. So I was like, made a little bit of an expletive. So in the end, we come in at half-time, we're 0-0. We're playing Durban United, one of the top teams, and we're 0-0, and we're bottom of the league at the time. And I always remember coming in thinking, we've done well here, boys, and him saying to me, you ever say anything to me? And I'm like, what's he on about? So he said, you haven't even played for anyone in it. And that was like red rag to a bull to me. As soon as he said that, you haven't played for anyone, I remember getting hold of my shirt like that, and I got it to my shoulders like this because I was going to take the shirt off and just throw it on him, basically. And two of the lads either side of me said, no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Leave him. So in the end, that was probably the only manager that I ever actually wanted to knock him out because of, comments like that to me, coming from Liverpool, to say you haven't played for anyone, was like, if you don't play for anyone, you can't play for your team.
Who was the next manager that you felt like knocking out? Was there any others during your career? 'Cause you played for about 25, didn't you?
Yes, there's loads of the 25.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's 25 of them, but I would say that, not knockout, but I think that there's some managers like Willie Bell. Unfortunately, Willie Bell was a great, nice person.
And
but
coach.
Just with regards to this management, management, sadly it lacked a little bit, and he was probably one of the ones.
Yeah.
In fact, I always remember my last game that I played. He decided to play me on the left wing against West Bromwich Albion.
Yeah.
And I remember, because we had two tunnels.
Yeah, we did. Down
So
the
we
side
had one in the
and
corner
centre.
and one in the
Yeah.
centre. And I always remember running up, and my last game was went up the tunnel, down the road, and ended up in Nottingham Forest. So that was my last game. And then we were playing, the following week, we were playing Villa.
Yeah.
At Villa Park, and we're all preparing for the game, because big game against Aston Villa. And I always remember on the Friday he pulled me to one side and he said to me in his very low voice, Scottish low voice, I'm selling you to Nottingham Forest. And I was like, what? We're playing Villa tomorrow. And he went, no, you're going up the road. And that was basically my last time that I played.
Brian, your first manager was Tommy Docherty,
Yeah.
wouldn't it have been?
Tommy Docherty and Arthur Cox's assistant, yeah.
How didn't that work at Villa for the Doc? Because when you look at, my understanding is that, and I'm not a Villa supporter, I'm Birmingham City through and through, but my understanding is Tommy took you down, didn't he?
Yeah, that first season, yeah. As a 15-year-old boy, I
Yeah.
went to Villa in the second division and watched them get relegated. I mean, I think there's only one game sticks out in my head, which would be in Huddersfield Town. I think we beat them 4-1 at Villa Park, and everybody was going, right, we've turned the corner now.
Yeah.
But we never did. And as a young kid, I mean, I used to do I used to be the T-boy in the first team dressing room, so I was like privy to a lot of the arguments that were going on. And I always found that fascinating because I taught myself to look, to listen, and to learn a lot when I was a kid. Because you just, in 1969, here I am, 15-year-old in a first-team dressing room that's struggling.
Yeah.
So you learn a hell of a lot. You see, I can still see arguments and good and good fun as well. I can still see how the mess, but you could sense. I mean, as a kid, I'm sitting and listening to them moaning about the manager and all sorts of things, and there was no harmony in the dressing room at all. So, I got that. So I recognised that it just didn't work for Tommy. I don't know. I mean, I've met him several times since and always got on quite well with him, but he didn't. He had a lot of trouble with quite a few of the players. He would take them away on a Friday night, and a lot of the lads didn't like that in those days. I remember things like that. He used to keep them away. It was very fractured. The whole dressing room. Nobody was really happy. And at that time, they'd signed Bruce Rioch for £100,000, which was the record signing. And it was only basically when the likes of Vic Crow came in that he began to get some sort of harmony in the dressing room. But there was always I always remember as a kid thinking, whoa, crikey, why they're not happy. They're moaning their bag off, and yet there I am, like thinking this is great in the first team dressing room, listening to them, all of their jokes and everything in those days, and watching the pros cutting people's socks up and hanging them, and the big fight was going on, and some of them were laughing in a cut. Just the whole it was like a theatre, the first team dressing room. For me as a kid, it was like a theatre. You're looking in there, you're thinking, you'd say Pat McMahon would just be singing, Dick Edwards would sing in the corner, and that's all they did. They just loved singing. You get Barry Hall sitting in the other corner lighting a cigarette up and sitting there smoking his cigarettes. And it was for me, as I've said, for a young kid leaving home, going into that dressing room, sitting there, you're just thinking, wow, what's going on here in the world? And then I got the Tommy Docherty, Arthur Cox, very strict, very 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 strong, and a lot of them didn't like it, So it was a difficult dressing room, but one which educated me unbelievably, so much so that it's affected my managerial days when I was older. I learned so much in that first year; it was untrue. But yes, I as a kid watched a dressing room that was very fractured, with a manager and an assistant who Arthur I've got to know really well over the years. I mean, Arthur was manager at Derby when I was manager at Leicester, and there was somebody I looked up to as a 15-year-old. I'm actually on the same level with them all of a sudden. So there's lots of things that happened in that first period that have stayed with me all my life, but especially the dressing room. Yeah. But yes, it was fractured, and it taught me about a fractured dressing room being very much the basis on failure, really.
But I guess going down to the third division, I'd be amazed if that was a harmonious dressing room.
No, yeah.
But Tommy did take Chelsea down to the second division. I mean, he'd got Jimmy Greaves at the time, and he took over from Ted Drake at Chelsea, but brought them up and had Docherty's Diamonds. He got a group of youngsters that he turned into one of the most charismatic football clubs in the history of British football in Chelsea. He could have possibly done it to you guys at Aston Villa, because he didn't. Chico Hamilton, was it Tommy that brought
Chico?
Because he was at Chelsea as well.
They'd signed Bruce Rioch and his brother Neil. They'd signed Chico Hamilton, and they'd signed Pat McMahon. Those were the four major signings as it was that year, and Bruce was the record signing. I mean, Chico was a great lad. But I mean, daft as a brush, he was great. they were funny, he comes into that category. Him and Neil Rioch and them, they just loved the night out. They loved the nightlife, and it was so there was all those categories. Like as a kid, I'm looking at and I'm seeing the serious side of it. The Bruce Riochs, the Ray Gradens, the Jeff Bowdens, the serious. There was the serious ones. There was the daft ones. There were the ones who used to mess people around and cut their socks up And as a kid walking in there, just getting shouted at, cup of tea over here, son, 3 sugars, and also, all that I was getting thrown at me. It's an unbelievable place, and I don't think there's that type of that doesn't happen. I mean, there's still fun in a dressing room. I'm not saying there's no character,
Yeah.
but that you go back into that 1969 for me, and then a Friday sticks in my head more than anything else when the team sheets used to go up, and you know, you'd finish training and everybody sat around for an hour and a half before the first team sheet come on, the second team sheet was hung up, and the A team and the youth team. So it was 4 teams, and at senior level you could see the disappointment in the senior places if they were in the reserve team, because they were going to pay for like £1 win bonus, whereas if you were in the first team you got appearance money and you got win bonus. So you've got married men who, you know, in the late 20s 30s, who were going to the next day play for £1 for playing in the Central League, as opposed to, you know, doubling their wages because their appearance money was pretty much the same as their basic. And so you had that created atmosphere in itself. The fact that so many of them, and there was no subs in those days, so you were either in the first team, second team, youth team, or A team. End of story. And that pinning of you know, you'd wait for that hour, and then when the coaches walked in pinning the teams, there was this big rush to the team sheets, and then there was a massive disappointment, and you could see people chucking their boots across the dressing room. They're not in the first. It was just that basic, you know. There was no planning about. Nobody's going out and practicing how we're going to play the next day. Friday morning was just like a training session, and then you sat there and waited for your team sheets to go up, you know. So sports science and all that just wasn't there in those days.
You had the team sheet after the training session.
You'd wait till about 1 o'clock, because when we'd finished in the morning, used to be I would be the tea boy, so I'd be sitting there pouring tea for everybody. But the players would be, some of them, like I say, they'd sit there having a cigarette. They'd go in the bath. They'd come out. Some would be ready. Some would still be sitting in their kit, waiting for that team sheet to go up. And there's only 11 people on that team sheet. You know, and if you were Newcastle at home, you were Newcastle away with the reserves. And there was, so it was you've gone from the highest point to the lowest point in 10 seconds once you've seen where your name was. And that's for the senior players, not for us kids. But I used to witness senior players chucking their boots across the room, you know, and swearing, she's going to kill me, I'm not getting paid this week, and you know, and all those things like that. So it was a really cutthroat thing, and you look back, and those sort of things educate you. When you've stayed in the game, you've become educated because of it, because you want to realise, how do I get away from anything that I'm going to do that's more modern, but make sure I'm not creating that atmosphere of hatred all of a sudden. Because all those things have helped me in 50 years of football, really, you know. But them early things are massive. They're massive in your mind, aren't they? And they're massive in your education of the game, aren't they, Pete?
Well, it's the same. When I was at Wolves, it was the same. Yeah. In them days, it was Sam H. Young used to come in, and the 3 things we pinned up: first team, reserve team, youth team. And as Brian said, the youth team would kick off at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then the reserves, wherever the first team were playing, you were playing at home or away, and you were kicking off at 3. Everyone kicked off at 3 o'clock. And we were the same. I always remember that the 2 strikers that we had was Dugan and Richards. But we had 8 strikers for them 2 positions. So we had the likes of Alan Sunderland, Steve Kinden, Peter Eastoe, Norman Bell, myself. So we had like loads of players, and we were all sort of always disappointed. I always remember that Alan Sunderland, Dugan had got injured, and Alan Sunderland had got in the side at the time and was playing really well. And of course, we as youngsters, we all sat in one corner. So all the 21-year-olds, all the, you know, the lads sat in the one corner, and all the senior ones were all around the sort of. And Dugan and Richards was over the far side, and I always remember Alan Sunderland was playing really well. He played about 4. So of course we'd all jump up straight away to look at in the reserves again, you know. And Alan Sunderland just sat there, and he was like, well, I'm in the first team, you know. I've been. So we all got up. We all looked back at him, and we said, "You're not in, you know." And he went, "What?" He said, "He's put that old one Dugan in again." So we all went and gave him a little bit of a helping hand, saying I wouldn't stand for that. If I was you, I wouldn't stand.
You ain't going to go toe to toe with the Duke, though, are you?
I wouldn't stand for that. I'd actually go and see him. So we're all winding him up. So all of a sudden he screamed down the Wolves had this. You went down the corridor, went to the end, cut round the sort of side, and then double back on yourself to get to the manager's door. So he went down, screaming down there, turned the corner. When he got to the bottom, we'd all followed him. Then we heard him banging on the door, and the voice says, "Come in." So he opens the door and he comes in. He says, "What do you want?" So we're at the door now listening. So he starts screaming and shouting. So he says, "I can't believe," he said, "I'm not in the team." And so he looks at, just takes one look at him and he says the magic words of, "Get out!" And he goes, "Thanks, boss. Thanks for seeing me."
Yeah.
And then come down, we were all in the dressing room. He said, "I told him." But
In a fashion.
That was the way it was. It was in them days. Was just you looked for that. Not in the team, no.
But reserve team football. I know you weren't playing in front of many when you're playing in the Central League, and Birmingham used to play in the football combination. But you learnt so much surely by playing against men, playing against players that wasn't in the first team, rather than today it's like 17s play with the 17s, 19s play with the 19s, the youth are in their own. But like you've alluded to earlier, I mean, I do a show with Alan Hudson. Tommy used to take, because he used to play with Michael in the youth team. So Tommy used to take Alan when he was 16 away with Chelsea, pretty much like you. And Alan says to me, "I learnt so much." Absolutely. And then reserve team football, you learnt so much. You learnt the ways of the old pros, whereas kids today, I don't think they're having the same background as Pete when you come through in your manner, and Brian when you come through in your... In fact, I think kids today have it too easy, too soon.
Well, I'll back that up and endorse that 100%, because when I was 15, my first game in the reserve team was at Man United. Yeah. And I'm 15, I've travelled up on the bus, I'm excited because I'm in the Central League at 15. I'm playing with all the lads who are, pro players who were gutted really. But we get to the ground and the coach comes and says to me, "Right, you're playing against you." And I could run. I mean, that's one thing I could do. I could run.
You could play
I played midfield those days as if in my first year. He said, "Right, you're playing against a player who doesn't want to be out there today, and he's a little bit old, and you won't get and he won't get anywhere near. You'll run the socks off him." I said, "Okay, what's his name?" He said, "Paddy Crerand." Well, they carried me off after 60 minutes. They carried me off the pitch after 60 minutes. Yeah. I couldn't get near him. Yeah. And Paddy Crown to this day and would say, "No, he couldn't run very far, could he? It wasn't very quick." Yeah. And I've seen Paddy so many times in years to come, and I've said, and he now looks and laughs at me when he sees, because I know what you're going to say. You played against me when you were a kid, and you hadn't got a clue. Yeah. But that's what it was, and I was educated in 60 minutes of football. Yeah. I was educated about, you don't really have to run a million miles to affect a game. It helps if you can run, of course, but I just couldn't get near him. Yeah. I just, you go home on nights like that as a kid and you're sitting there thinking, "God, how good have I got to be to get up there?" But he was absolutely incredible. I couldn't get near him. So you learn, and because they were closer in those days. Going back to my 15-year-old again, my first day at Aston Villa, we all trained together. And I was thinking, we'd be off on our own somewhere. No. 30-odd pros, 15 apprentices, all training together. And again, it was the hardest day of my life. But if I look back on it, I started to grow up. I went home after 3 months of being an apprentice. And I went back to my little sports centre at Peterlee, and I was so different to all my friends who were still, obviously we're all 15, but I'd grown up in 3 months. I was so different to them, it was untrue, because I was in a works environment, in a men's environment. We have kids in it, and I've got a 15-year-old now and a 15-year-old 16. The thought of them leaving home today, I personally don't think they could survive, because society has changed so much. But you're just thrown in at the deep end. But wow, I don't think I'd swap my grown-up period in football, and I bet you wouldn't either. And yes, there are different things now, and there are so many things going on in the world which are politically correct and everything, and But I saw things at 15 that I wouldn't want my 15-year-old lad to see, in dressing rooms. But you grew up on the back of it as well. So there has to be a happy medium somewhere. I agree with you. 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds playing against 19, 17-year-old. Playing against your own age group all the time isn't going to be that beneficial for you. You have to learn, and you will learn a little bit more by being a little bit more diverse but I don't know. I think at the moment there has to be a change. I mean, the best of the best get there at 17 anyway. But it is becoming more difficult for like a kid like me who was quiet but had a talent, obviously, because you think we've got to just keep him with them because he's not ready for that yet. That's supposedly. But sometimes by throwing them in, it's surprising what they would come up with, and I think that still is the case. There could be, a lot of lads who are a little bit more quiet, who the coaches would say, no, look, he's not ready for that yet. But perhaps he is. Yeah. Perhaps he needs that to bring it out of him, and I think that is something that isn't tried and tested enough these days.
70s, I'm talking to strikers, what a wonderful group of players we had in the Midlands, didn't we? At Wolves, Birmingham, Aston Villa, and at West Bromwich Albion now. I mean, what would we do for 2 or 3 of them in the modern game? Because if you're looking at West Bromwich Albion, even Wolverhampton Wanderers really not got outstanding strikers. Aston Villa and Birmingham City even worse. So when I was a kid, looking from my Birmingham City point of view, we just got rid of Little and Gray, who was the torment of my younger school days, and then replaced by Peter Withe and Gary Shaw. And if you look at you 4 players, you two could have easily played together, because what you didn't have, Pete had, and the same as Shaw and Gray. So you had, if you're looking at it now, from my time of loving football to now, you 4 football players up front were as good as he ever got at Aston Villa Football Club, in my opinion.
Do you know what? Do you know, like today, possession is king, isn't it? It seems to be that possession is king, whereas in the first thing I was taught as a football player was keep your forwards in the game. Yeah. Keep your forwards in the game. When I first played with Andy Lockhead, well, I mean, he was a god to me, Andy. He just said to me, wherever I am, I want you 10 yards away from me. You play around me because I am the key person in this team. I'm the person that they're told to keep in the game. Yeah. You need to feed off me. But the game isn't like that. Possession is king now, what I mean? Bringing your strikers into the game. I mean, not that I would not like playing today, but I think, I used to, and people used to, with people like me, feed me, if it wasn't me, feed me down the channel so I could run down the channel chasing the ball. It was nothing like being involved in the game. Nowadays, a striker has to be so, well, I don't know. I mean, they have to be so patient because they're going to get, they're going to get, and why they're so rare is if they get 2 chances and stick one of them in, they're a great striker. If they get 3 chances and don't score one, they're no good sort of thing. But we used to get chances. And we were in the game constantly. I think certainly Peter, the key player in that team more than anything else, keep Withe in the game, but sure he'll feed off and we'll win games. And basically in the 70s and 80s to a degree, that's how football was. It was the main battle on the pitch was the centre half versus the centre forward, and that was the key battle. Yeah.
It's people say to me about teams play like Wimbledon and they play Route 1 football. Yeah. And I used to say to people, well, what's Route 1 football? Because if I'm a right back and I hit a ball over the top and the striker goes through and scores a goal, is that Route 1 football or is that doing what you've been asked to do, score goals? Yeah. And I just think you find yourself with a happy medium. And people, I always remember Jimmy Hill asking me one day, he says, how do you assess yourself as a footballer? And I said to him, my role in this football team is everyone who's on that field can find me at some point. Yeah. That is my role in the football team. And he said, oh, I didn't really think of it that way. I just said, well, from goalkeeper to anyone in the team, that's what you've got to do. You've got to be on. And the thing that gets me more annoyed than anything over strikers nowadays, they don't study. They don't study the centre-halves, and they don't study goalkeepers, and they don't study full-backs. They just think to go out and play. And the other thing that annoys me more than anything is that they never get on the side of the ball.
Yeah.
And they just delay, like the frustrating thing for me is when a striker's running, or not even running back, is walking back, and we've won possession of the ball and play a ball forward, and he's offside.
Yeah, lazy.
And and then the other thing is getting on the side of the ball. So if the ball, wherever the ball went, so if it went to the left back, I was available on that side of the field. If it now got transferred to the other side, by the time that ball's been transferred, if I couldn't get onto the other side of that field, by the time the ball's gone to the right back, I'm a poor striker. Yeah. And I see too much of it today, is I don't see people getting in positions to play strikers. And I used to say to all the back four and the midfield player, and I used to say to Gordon, don't run in me channel. Yeah. Wait till the ball's past you and then run in me channel. Because I'd leave a gap in front of me that they could just drop the ball into either my chest or into my thing, and then you link play up. Now I don't see that. I look at people looking at, I'm thinking, play it into them.
Yeah, there's a different philosophy about the game today. There is, without a doubt, a different philosophy, and you have to. I still enjoy watching the football today. I still enjoy it, but we're creating different type of football players. Possession is the king, and if you look at a lot of stats and they're going about people who've kept possession, but how many of that possession has actually created something in the game? And it's minimal, isn't it? Really, it's not a creative. If you create one chance in a game today and the chance is taken, you possibly a man of the match, which is quite crazy, really. But the game has changed, and the fact that I'm still involved in the game, I still enjoy every minute. And do I enjoy the currency? Yes, I do. I enjoy it, but I just think I'm so happy with the period that I played in, because it was different, and I just think it's something that can still come back into the game. I mean, I watched a few teams this season. As a manager and as a coach, I always played with three centre backs, and people say, well, you don't want to lose games, but we scored a lot of goals. I look at Wolves, who've won a promotion on that. You look at Chelsea are playing with three centre backs. Man City often do it now. There is room for that. There is. And you can say their football is good. So I think I think you still need to be brave in the game. You still need to be wanting to win the game and have a right go out there. There's nothing worse than watching a game and thinking, yeah, we've had plenty of possession today, but we haven't won the game. But it is today's key word is possession is king, I think, more than.
But again, it's what you do with that possession, absolutely. As you said. I mean, you look at England, for instance. Dyer, I mean, if they go to the World Cup and play with Dyer and Henderson playing there, I just think it's far too negative. There's a lack of creativity, and I think there's a lack of creative midfield players in our game today. We're all right at setting the teams up. We're very good at setting teams up not to lose and not to concede, and I get that, because football has always been like that. But when you got the ball, you've got to get that ball forward, pass the ball forward into the channels, forwards running after it and making space, dribbling. Midfield players, how many times you see a midfield player now drop his shoulder, he's gone. You've created space because a player's coming out, someone's running off, bang, 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 you're in, you scored a goal.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. And I agree. That's why I'm saying people like Peter and the Andy Lockheads, and I played with a lad called Keith Leonard, and all of those strikers who throughout the game, and you can look at all of the major teams in those days, the Peter Osgoods of this world. Also, there's loads of people, there's loads of centre forwards that you could pick with, and there's generally been like a creative player around them. The inside forwards, the Stanley Bulls, and all these sort of players of this, the Frank Worthingtons, all of these type of players who thrived off playing because they knew pretty much that their centre forwards was the centre forward centre half battle was the biggest, most important thing in the team. And then you had people who played from there on in, and then the wide players who got the ball and crossed the ball because the centre forward was going to come in there. If he didn't score with his header, you were looking for the pieces off him, and it was really adventurous. Really sort of, you couldn't call it Route 1. I don't think you can call it Route 1 because we actually played good football. It was a quality ball that you had to play to your centre forward. You couldn't just whack it up there. I agree, there were some teams who did play just long ball, route one, and played for then set piece situations. But in the main, the centre forward was the key, and the other players around him. But you can't tell me we didn't have good midfield players. There were great midfield players.
Without a doubt.
Well. So the whole game was different, that's what I try and say now to people. There is a new it's a new era, and you know I still enjoy it, but it's a completely different game.
Because when I was doing the youth team or director of youth, when Brian was there, is that I always remember I used to just walk around and watch all the games going on.
Yeah.
And I'd be standing round by the coach, and in the end I used to have to put my hand on his shoulder, and I'd say to him, will you stop telling them to pass the ball? Because all he was shouting was pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball. So in the end I had to pull them all in. I said, look, it's all right you're saying pass the ball, but there's a time when we've got to start dribbling with the ball and taking people on and committing people.
Mixing the game up.
Don't be just telling people to pass the ball.
Well, I think teams also had, talking about key centre forwards, but they also had a midfield player who would powerful with the ball. You had Dennis Mortimer, who was one of the best around, really, and Dennis never got in the England team, but that type of a player. And most of my teams as a manager I've always had, I still worked on two main strikers, but I always had an Ian Taylor type of player.
Yeah.
You know, not especially in international football, but someone who could carry the ball from one player and join in, and so you know that's how football was as we sort of played, and to a degree managed. I think but the recent trend is, you know, keeping that ball, looking for the little opportunity, and having a centre forward who might occasionally sneak in there and get one.
Yeah.
You know, and that centre forward, in the modern day centre forward, is comfortable with the fact that he's going to play for 90 minutes and might get two little moves in the game where he wins the game, and there you can't buy them because they win the game for you. They're expensive. There is a different, completely different feel to the modern game.
And I remember talking to all the young lads, Villa young lads, and we were I think we were at one of the, might have been at Wembley, for the semi-final, and they were in. So there was, I think it was like half a dozen of them. So I said to him, "What positions do you play then?" Said midfield. So I said to him, "Please tell me you can run with the ball from midfield." So he says, "Why?" So I said, "Because that is the lifeblood of teams now. If you can run with the ball from midfield and commit people, because they're so well organised." Back fours and things like that, so well organised. If you all of a sudden go past your man, then everything changes, because people have got to now come out the back four, and people have got to do things and change things. And I think the other thing is that when I always remember when I went to Thailand, coaching in Thailand, and the first thing that they said to me was, "Are you going to change the system we play?" I hadn't even seen the team play yet, and I haven't seen the players. But they all play three centre-halves, like Brian was saying. So they said, "Are you going to change anything?" Well, he just wasn't good enough to defend as a back four. So we had to play three centre-halves. But what I adapted to was, okay, we've got three centre-halves, but you're not just a centre. They had three centre-halves who just stood there and just stayed in the positions. So what I did is, in the end, said to them, "Look, you're not really a centre-half. When we've got the ball, you now become midfield players and you start running with the ball, so I'm going to get people coming out from the back." So we changed it. We ended up getting one of the three centre-halves to start coming out with the ball and running. And all of a sudden it changed the game, because, you're not supposed to be doing this. And I think that as long as people know what they're doing, but you have got a commitment to sort of run at people and open the game up. And I think that's where probably Manchester City have got the players in their side. I think De Boer is one of them players that just sees things and just drives in. Because you look, sort of Dennis, the amount of goals that he scored, if you look at Brian Robson making runs, not necessarily running with the ball, but just all of a sudden going beyond strikers. You know, out of I could always see when I'm jumping for the ball, I could see out of here and out of the right side, I could see Dennis making runs. I could see Gordon Cowan's coming, from this side. I think that I don't think they do that as much I think the better teams do it.
Yeah, they do.
But I don't think
Yeah.
the teams that are struggling have them midfield players that are going to go and get you 10 goals, 12 goals a season.
But again, if you're looking at modern football, I mean, Man City play a great game, but it's only come from the 50s when the Magyars come to Wembley and destroyed England, and then the disciple of that was Rinus Michel, and he invented total football. So football's never changed all through the years. It's still fundamentally get the ball down, pass the ball, get forward, score a goal, win the game.
But it's
simple.
You see, that's the thing that people say to us.
Yeah.
They say to us, "How is the game?" You know, the game's changed. The game's changed because the players are fitter. No, they're not.
No, I don't think they are.
The games are technically better. No, they're not. They're not technically better. One thing that has changed, certainly diet.
Yeah.
Diet's changed, that's for sure. And also the drinking element. The players don't drink now. Well, majority of players don't drink in our culture. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
I think it's a bad thing.
But having said that, I think that with regards to the surface that they play in, if we would have played on them surfaces that they're playing on today, don't tell me that we couldn't play in today's game. I'm sorry, though.
I mean, the baseball ground. Any time after October, it was like a quagmire. To be fair, Villa used to have the semi-finals at Villa Park, and there was hardly a blade of grass in April on Villa Park. As you said, I mean, the City ground in Nottingham, that churned up a lot, didn't it? You know, all grounds. In fact, one of the best surfaces was St Andrews. We did have a good surface, but lots of them in them 70s eras. You know,
well, the best playing surface in our day was actually Carlisle United.
Was it really?
Because it was Cumberland grass, and
Okay.
and that was one of the best playing surfaces that I've ever played on. And everyone was saying, "How can you have a surface like this?" Because Cumberland soil or Cumberland grass at the time was one of the best grass in probably the world. I mean, all right, it's changed now because it's different, but just for the playing surface. Have you ever
I played at Carlisle a few times, it was never a bad surface, but as you say, you just got used to, you know, sand and the bad bounce and trying to get the ball down before it hit the ground and bringing it down. So all those things, we were all very technically, I think lots of the players were technically gifted, but obviously sometimes the bounce of the ball or the state of the pitch made it a little more awkward, and but you had to have your wits about you the whole time in a game. So I think technically, I think that they work at things far more than we used to. You know, we used to have good training sessions and everything, but I think that they spend a lot of time working at the touch and the technique and the passing. So there's all those things which have moved on, and they're far more scientific than we ever were. Friday morning at Aston Villa was 4 laps round Villa Park, into the car park for half an hour. Then, you know, if you'd survived the car park, you got on the team sheet sort of thing. You know, it was a bit basic at times, but you know, as I say, it was a great era to play in, and we have some wonderful sort of stories. I mean, we work really hard as well in terms of fitness. I know they're fit. They're different today. They do a lot of weight training and stuff like that, and their bodies are physically stronger. But you know, we did a lot of different types of training. We did a lot of, certainly under Ron Saunders, we worked unbelievably hard.
Well, Vic was the same, wasn't he? Vic was
a
hard trainer.
As I've said, I always remember my playing days, especially, which didn't last too long, but we worked our socks off. You know, we've Ron Saunders' day off was coming in at 9 o'clock in the morning and leaving at 10 o'clock. That was a day off. You know, because he always had this theory that if he said to you on a Tuesday, right, you got Wednesday off, you'd go out and have a few bevies on this. Yeah. So he'd say, right, you've got tomorrow off, you're in at 9 o'clock. So you'd come in at 9 o'clock, he'd work the socks off you for an hour, he'd say, right, there you are, day off now. And that was Ron's mentality. You know, he very rarely gave us time off. But his time off was, you were in so early that you were technically having a day off.
And he used to wind you up a lot.
Wind me up? Yeah, him and I used to really, I mean,
you clashed
with
Ron all the time.
All the time, yeah. But he did that just on purpose. I can look back now that I've been a manager, and he found a way of getting something out of me. But I'm convinced he did it on purpose now. I've convinced myself. Well, I hope I have. But having said that, I think it was a few years ago you had the reunion at Villa Park from the European Cup final day. And I'd been a manager now for some 18 years or something, and I thought, there's Ron Saunders. I'm going to say to him, I'm going to say something nice to him. I'm going to go up. And I did, because I actually found over the years that I used a lot of Ron Saunders' training methods. Yeah. My personality and his personality was so different. So
you had one.
I didn't join in the way he could destroy a person in 10 seconds, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't. But his training methods and I used to find myself saying things at half time. I go, Ron Saunders used to say that. Crikey, shut up, you know. And so I thought, I'm going to go up to him and I'm going to say. So I went up to him. I seen they'd get together. I wasn't invited. Alan Evans invited me as his guest because I don't think Ron would have had me there. But Alan's wife didn't go, and he said, why don't you come with me? I go, brilliant, Evo, I'll come with you. So I went and I saw Ron Saunders. I've gone, right. So I've gone over. I said, hello, Mr. Saunders. I just wanted to say thank you. I said, because as I got older, I began to realise a lot of things about you were really good. And he just shook my hand and just turned away and walked away from me. So I don't think he was up to making pals with me after all. But he was brilliant. I mean, he used to call me in his room, and he'd sit there and he'd go, I'd love to hit you. And I used to say, well, if you want to hit me, just hit me if it makes you feel better. Yeah. And that wound him up even more. So we had this real love-hate relationship, you know. But then when I was retiring, whether he was pleased to get me retired, he really was good to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a side to him that and Peter has often told me the story that to talk to Peter, he'd said, look, I want you to play alongside Brian Little. As it turned out, sure, he got the opportunity, and sure, he was brilliant in fairness. But, so he was thinking about even me as well as Peter. He was thinking about me finding the right partner, because I'd lost a lad called Keith Leonard, who was a really good young
Hall Green boy, wasn't he?
Yeah, who was but got injured as well. And Big Keith and I, 74, 75, the season we got promoted, I mean, he was brilliant to play off, you know, so... And sadly, Keith, but there's certain things that I can see later on, but he had a way with me. He used to love winding me up, and he'd like the fact that my reaction was to play well on a Saturday, and that's just the way he was. He was like that with people, you know. He was...
You say that to the youngsters now. You say that to the Cowanses and the Shaws and the Morleys, and he used to do things to them.
Yeah.
But they look back now. And if you ask them now, they go, "Yeah, I get it.
I get it now." You do get it later on.
Well, Brian was the same with Martin O'Neill, wasn't he? He used to wind Martin O'Neill up.
Yeah.
Because he'd say to you, hit the near post, you and Tony Woodcock, because I've got a barmy Irishman who's going to get on the far post.
Well,
but he always picked him, didn't he?
Martin was always moaning. We used to have our Friday coffee and bacon sandwiches in the cafe after the training on a Friday.
Yeah.
And we'd all be talking about the game, or talking about football, and then Martin would come in and saying, you won't believe it, he says, I'm at a murder case at the moment. We're like looking at Martin and saying, why are you telling us this? And he said, well, we just thought you'd be interested. No, we're not interested in that. Don't be talking about murder cases. Talk about football. And then he'd say, he says, well, I don't like Brian. He says, And I used to say to him, Martin, I don't want to say anything, but your name is on the team sheet every week. Why do you keep complaining about he doesn't like you, you're still in the team. You've gone through Teddy Curran, you've gone through Sean Hazelgrave, you're still in the team, you're still playing. And but he wouldn't. But he's the same. You ask him now, he didn't like him, but he realised what he'd done for him.
But isn't that the essence of a manager? To get the maximum out of you as a player. So we knew to get the maximum out of you as a player, you had to wind you up. For other players, you have to put your arm around the shoulder. Yeah. And for others, like with Pete, I'm guessing, Cloughie and you would probably go nose to nose, and you'd go out there, I'll show the old... And you'd run your backside off for him. 5 minutes before, you're probably wanting to knock him out. But managers have got to be almost... psychologist as well. What's good for one isn't good for the other, and you've got to know that person and manage that person.
Well, after all my years in management that I did, I always I came out with the sentence that the manager knows more about what's going on, and people will say, why has he left him out? But the manager might have had a conversation with him midweek where he's saying, my mum or my dad's not very well, or my girlfriend's got sick, or what, and there are so many things that go on behind the scenes that the football fan looks and go, why is that why is that not doing? But in fairness, what you have to try and give them, what you have to try and think of, there might be something going on behind the scenes, even though he was the best player on the park last week, that is somehow affecting him in some small way. And there's a million of traits that could affect why a manager picks a football team. And I think that's the one thing that I always held on to myself as a manager. When I'd walk out and the little old lady behind the dugout starts shouting at me, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing." I'm going, but I do, because I know he can't do that, because I'm, but you're hiding it because you can't tell them everything. Yeah. It's like the day, Sasha Churchich, I picked him on a Friday. I get a phone call at 2:00 in the morning off my physio saying Sasha can't play tomorrow. I've said, well, why? What's wrong with him? Well, he's in London having a nose job, and he'd booked himself into a clinic in London, and I've had to keep this out of the press for 8 weeks. You know what I mean? It's like, what? Until he turned up with a tiny little nose, which really gave everything away. But there's sort of things, and you're going, crikey, my word, I can't shout that out. At the time, there's a million things that go on as a manager that you've just got to try and box clever with. Yeah. But at the same time, you're looking after individuals and knock on your door and saying, Ian Ormondroyd used to knock on my door, and he'd say, "Who am I playing against tomorrow?" And generally it was Jerry Taggart who is not, and I'd say it's Jerry Taggart. Oh, God, he's the strongest man in the world, Gaffer. And I'd say, well, we'll play you on the left wing. So people would say to me, why are you playing Ormondroyd on the left wing? Because he's frightened of Jerry Taggart. But you can't say that in public at the time. Well, you can't at the time. You've got to keep everything like under wraps. There's a tactic today. He's on the left wing, Ormondroyd. There's a million things.
You look like a genius.
Of course it does, yeah. But I mean, it's like there's... What I'm trying, they're funny sides of what can be more serious sides of putting people in a team and leaving people out of a team. And some lads, can come up and say, "I don't feel very well," and you're just thinking, and then they're looking for an excuse beforehand, aren't they? Sometimes people will come in and you sense, you get to know he's looking for an excuse. He's not. There's something. So you use all of those things that you hear to actually select your team. And one of the hardest things to do as a football manager is when you've won 4 games in a row with the same team, but deep down it's time to change. Somebody's back who needs to be in there, or the hardest thing then is, and the best person in the world at changing his team was Ferguson, of course. And none of us could replicate how well he did it, because people would look at it and say, why has he left him out? Why is he selling him? Was he wrong? Very rarely. But that's the biggest, that's the hardest thing. And I found towards the end of my career, the hardest thing I found was actually picking the team. Yeah. Because you just get a bit blurred, and sometimes towards the end I was thinking, I'll just play them again. And you lose that. That's why I sort of at the time thought I need a breather from this, because I found it harder to pick the team. I was thinking, I somehow was trying to avoid being as ruthless as I needed to be. Yeah. And I've heard a couple of people have said that who managed. I mean, I did 900 games in 6 levels of football, and in the end, it was, I need a breather from this because I'm finding it harder to pick the team. I was like there was an issue, and I'm thinking, can I avoid that? Yeah, I'll avoid. I'll just put him in, or I'll do this, and you're not doing the right thing. Now that's when you need a breather. That's how I found it, and I have heard another. Several lads who managed for quite a lot of games going, it was the picking the team that did me in the end. I couldn't find that ruthless streak every now and again to say, I tell you what, he's out because I don't care how much flack I'm going to get. So that you go through all sorts of cycles as in different capacities. And I found certainly later on at a couple of clubs that I found it more difficult to pick the team. Yeah. In my mind, I probably knew what it was, but I would always skirt around it a little bit. And I think once you get to that stage, then it's time to have a little breather, because you're not. The new manager walks into a football club, straight away goes, right, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that, and that. Whereas you've been a manager for 100 and odd games there, and you've now lost 3 in a row, and you're thinking sometimes that team selection gets a bit blurred, and that's when it probably needs a fresh impetus and a fresh look at it.
Did you look at it the same way, Pete?
Well, it was funny with regards to me because we always get, when I always remember going to Thailand as the national coach in Thailand, and as I said to you, everyone's saying about changing the system. But the biggest thing was everyone, whatever I played, the first thing that they said is, "Oh, you play the British game, the Route 1 football." I was like, "What?" Saying, "Well, you play Route 1 football." And I'm going, which game are you watching? I always remember we played Brazil. We played before one of the World Cups, and they brought the youth team, which is the under 21s, and they brought the national team, and it was in the King's Cup. We were playing sort of 4 club tournaments, so we had to play the national team, who had Rivaldo and had all the top players in, and we lost 8-0, but we should have been 3-0 up after about 15 minutes. We created 3 great chances and missed them. They get 1 chance, Rivaldo
Game over, isn't it?
knocks in the top corner. Then we get another few chances. Then, anyway, cut a long story short, end of the game, go up to their coach or manager and says to me, he said, "I see you don't play English style football." So I says, "What do you mean?" So he said, "You play Brazilian, you passing and moving and doing all these sort of things." And I said, "Yeah, well, you want to tell the media that because everyone thinks that we just play Route 1 football." And you get labelled, British coaches get labelled with one sort of style of football play. And I never ever played, in all the time I was abroad, never played that style of football. The different thing for what Brian's saying to what it is in Thailand, I just picked the best team. And there was never any... I probably had once in 10 years where a player actually confronted me. Yeah. In all the other times, no one ever said anything. Why aren't I playing the team? Why? They just got on with it. They just done it because they knew it was for the best sort of result of the team. But I can understand that. I can understand what he's talking about. Is that you do get to stages where you're thinking and you say, and as a manager, people don't realise that. Okay, you've got your staff that are there. Yeah. So you've got all your staff. So you're taking information from all your staff and saying, what do you think? Da. But at the end of the day, and I know what he was like, it's down to you. Yeah. You've got to make the final decision. You've got to go, right, this is what I'm going to do. Thanks for all the information, but we're going to do it this way. And we're going to, and at the end, you live by the stuff, because they don't look to say, it's your fault, your fault, your fault. It's your fault. Mm-hmm. So you've got to, if you're going to live, if you're going to do it, live and die by the sword. Yeah. Don't go back away and thinking, I shouldn't have done that, Exactly. That was because, inevitably you're going to get the sack. It's inevitable.
All managers do, don't they? Yeah. That as soon as you walk through the door, you've got to walk out of it.
You're going to get the sack. So if you're going to get the sack, don't go away thinking I got the sack and I didn't do it the way I wanted to do it, because you're letting yourself down. I said that about Saturday's game. I was thinking to myself, as a senior player, what would you be saying in the dressing room? And the one thing that I'd be saying to players is that, listen, this goes very quickly. This 90-minute goes like that. And if you don't come off the field after 90 minutes and say, you know what, I could have given a bit more. Come off the field and say, I've given me all. I've given everything that I could possibly give. And if it's not good enough, it's not good enough. But don't, so as a manager, as a player, as a coach, whatever you're doing, give it your best shot and give 100%.
But again, that's that transfers to any level of football. When I managed up to 16s and passed the kids on to floodlit football, then I used to say to my boys, don't come off the pitch moaning. No. You can impact anything on that pitch, but when you come off the pitch, forget it's gone. So don't moan about it. But you had different problems in Thailand to what Brian would have had pretty much managing in England. You had a tsunami to deal with, didn't you?
Yeah, that was Indonesia.
Oh, Indonesia was that?
That was... it happened in Boxing Day, and I was training the team for the Tiger Cup, which was changed to the Suzuki Cup. So we would, we always trained 7 o'clock in the morning, early in the morning. Yeah. And I was training on the day and just had this eerie feeling. You're doing your training session, but you've just got something in the back, and you're looking round and you're looking at things going on around you. So I'm looking at all the management staff, all the hierarchy on the side watching us train. I'm thinking, something's not right here, there's something going on. And then in the end I stopped for a water break, as it were, and sort of went over and said, something's going on, what's going on? And then they said, we're getting reports there's been a tsunami, which is in the northern, it's in a place called Hajjai, which is right in the northern part of Indonesia. So I said, what does it mean? He says, there's 6 players out there who are from the region. So I said, I'll stop the session, you've got to stop the session. And then it was just a question of, but 3 days later we had to play in the semi-final of the Cup in Malaysia, and we've already lost the first game at home. So it was then a question of sort of lifting morale, as it were, and just saying to players, look, this is an ideal opportunity for us to resurrect the country, as it were. If we can go and win the game, then the whole country will be lifted with regards to what's happening and how many people have been sort of killed, as it were. And fortunate enough, we went there and we beat them in Malaysia. We beat them 5. So, and it was decisions that you make in that game that changes the game, you know. And I always remember that when I lost my job in Thailand, my son Jason was working in Thailand as well, and all the media were doing interviews, and they were interviewing the hierarchy of Thailand. So if you can imagine that I was only supposed to be there for 3 months, but I ended up staying for 5 years, and then they started making statements saying that we wanted to change because we wanted to use sports science and sports psychology.
Yeah, right.
So my son Jason says, do you not realise that my father's been doing this for 5 years with you to get your minds switched over from defeative, because that's what they had. He had this defeative mentality at the time. So it was changing that mentality. You know, it was changing that mentality to going out and playing against Japan and thinking, well, we'll lose to Japan, we'll lose to Korea, we'll lose to the big... So it's a bit like the Premier League. There's the big boys in Asia, and there's the ones that are just in between. So we went from being bottom to all of a sudden becoming one of the powerhouses, as it were. So it's amazing how people have this different philosophy of view of as I say, with a British coach, as I say, with thinking that you're not doing something, and they've come up with this brand new idea that's it's sports science and sports psychology, and you know, it just amazes you. But you're right, it's a different coaching national team and coaching club teams is totally different. It's different completely. Would
either of you two have fancied or even now fancy managing England?
I think we've Brian and I have spoken about it many times, really, with regards to club sides, as it were, or any side really. I think that we've realised about the difference that we have for one another, that we could. Well, I know for a fact that we could coach and manage a team, whether it be here or whether it be abroad, whether it be anywhere.
I think you're forever educating yourself. You know, for me, it's probably been, I don't know, it's 5 or 6 years since I managed a football club. Yeah. But in those 5 years, I've been working in a capacity Aston Villa, so I've watched every one of their games for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I worked out in Dublin for the Setanta Sports Television, where I co-commentated on your Champions League games, Europa League games, Premier League games. So you're educating yourself. I don't think there's a day in my since I left home at 15, there hasn't been a period in my life where I'm not educating myself on football in some capacity. Yeah. The fact that a few years ago I had that freeze about look, and I knew I wasn't doing myself justice, so I thought I've got to have a breather from this. Yeah. But I don't go out looking for a job today. But could I work today? Yeah, of course I could. Of course I could, because I'm forever educating myself in football. And if I was offered one, would I would have to seriously say, yeah, you would seriously consider it again, because I've not stopped educating myself. Yeah. Every game I've watched the last 2 years, every game for Aston Villa the last 2 years, I look at players, I look at how they play, I look at how the managers do. I watch the managers down at how they're addressing the games. I listen to people around me. and prior to that, watching the football. So you never stop educating yourself. And I actually feel, right, apart from having my knee done in the next week's time, which needs doing again, I feel better now than I've felt for quite some years. You know, I've had a breather from it, and could I manage? Of course I could, because I think I've well, for a start, I've managed in six tiers of English football, been reasonably successful in it. Had a couple of hiccups, which is the par for the course. So yeah, I think, you know, I think there is this, sadly today, there is, and I say it a lot on the social media and everything, the older managers get called dinosaurs now, unfortunately, don't they? But you know, you can't tell me. Look at what Roy Hodgson's just gone and done at Crystal Palace. I mean, it's an incredible feat what he's done there, isn't it? Really, you know, I mean, it's brilliant what he's done. And why does he do it? Because he's got the enthusiasm to do it. And I think that's the most important thing, having that enthusiasm. And if there was a job offered, as long as you're enthusiastic for it and you're doing it for the right reasons, then yes, you would do it. But you know, that's something. Could I manage a football team tomorrow? Yes, of course I could. Do I want to? Well, I've not been asked, so I can't really answer the question, to be honest.
You was born in 1953.
Yeah.
And Pete, you was August in 1951. So
yes.
There's about just under 2 years between you. So now, when you were 40, you know, you'd be managing, you know, 41, you took over at Aston Villa. My guess is you would be better as a manager today than what you was when you was 41. Your knowledge is much greater. You've seen a lot more. You're more educated.
Yeah,
why don't we tap into that education of a footballer? Because the bottom line is, you were born to play football. You're a football person, and same as you, Pete. So why do we say he's too old? He's not too old.
No,
It's
not
a fear
too old,
factor, I
I
think.
think it is, yeah. Why do we
It's a fear
keep
factor.
going foreign coaches as well and managers? We've got enough English, British managers here to do jobs in English football. I find it absurd.
Well, I think that it's there's a little bit of now that's, and I've said this before to a lot of young coaches as well who's coming in. I said and I haven't said me. I've just said to them, go and get yourself a mentor.
Yeah.
Go and find someone who's a mentor. So he said, what do you mean? So I said to him, go and find someone he's not after your job, but he will be your advisor. When you've got problems, you go to him and he will help you. Have him as your assistant or whatever you want to call him, but have someone who's a little bit senior, who knows, who's been in the game, knows the game, and can advise you as much as what they possibly can. And don't have this fear that he's after your job.
Yeah.
He's
You know,
not
the
after your
Millwall
job.
manager does it this year. He has Steve Coppell, doesn't he?
Yes.
And there's not many of them do that now, unfortunately. But, you know, I mean, you look at the job he's done down at Millwall in the last year and a half, 2 seasons, because they got promoted last season from Division 1 and they've just missed out on the playoffs this year. But he has Steve Coppell as a mentor to him. And I think there is definitely a role for people like ourselves. But like you say, there is a bit of a fear factor. And I it's hard. I try now to switch myself back to 40, and did I think I needed help? And I probably didn't. I didn't think I needed help.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
that was you as a 14-year-old.
So I'm saying, but that's
yeah.
what I'm saying now. I'm trying to say to a 40-year-old,
A
oh, you don't
40,
have to
yeah,
think
sorry.
like that. So that you have to have the open mind enough to say, you know, there are some out there who would do it, but would I have done it when I was 40? No, when I was 40, I thought I was king. You know, I was in complete control of what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, I'd won 2 championships at Darlington. I took Leicester to 3 playoff finals. I came to Aston Villa, kept them up in the Premier League, then finished 4th and 5th in the Premier League. So I can understand to a degree. I can understand their mentality, but I think the game today is far more complicated. There are far more things that a manager has to deal with than he ever had to deal before. And sometimes having someone around who might have sampled it could well be a big help to him. Because the modern manager today at 40 is bombarded, completely, totally bombarded with pressure from the game now. That game the other day that Aston Villa played, the amount of pressure on that game, the amount of money that game could generate for that football club, the amount of ethos to get back into the Premier League is now... When I took Leicester into the Premier League in 1993-4, it was a great achievement. But you compare that 20 years on,
Yeah.
It's a different ball game now. It's vast. It's massive. It's worldwide. It's all over. So the only way I can answer saying when I was 40, which was in the 90s, I was capable of handling everything. The pressure today is different on them. It's massive on them today, and I think they could well do with people around them who they could sit with, having a coffee, general conversation, nothing over the top. And as Peter said, it's up to them to make their final decision in the end, isn't it? But to have somebody who could sensibly say, look, I've seen this, I've done this, I've been there. Have you looked around the corner to see how many people? Because I used to say to myself when I was a kid, look round corners, because you have to know what's coming to hit you.
Exactly,
You know, so you had to be ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
Now, because of all the pressure they're under, they perhaps don't look round the corners often enough. You know, they're just, no, I'll do that. And they haven't looked at what's going to hit them as they get round the corners. But people like ourselves, and there are a lot of people like ourselves who've managed football, who've played football, who've been in football 50 years, who can help. But there is still that fear factor, which sadly is there, you know.
Yeah, that game on Saturday, Villa against Fulham, and then on the night there was the Champions League final. I would say, again, my opinion, there was more to lose with the Villa Fulham game than there was to lose in the Champions League game. Because okay, Real Madrid won it and Liverpool didn't. Karius took dog's abuse, which I think is totally unnecessary and bang out of order in some cases. But with Villa losing that game, fundamentally an awful lot will change, sadly, at Villa. People will probably lose their jobs. There's players that won't come back because they're not going to be in the Premier League. And I think when you look at that, again, it's them pressures as well that you're taking into that game. And I just think that, you know, the game now is a different game. I just don't think it's necessarily any better for it, because you end up playing a lot more in a negative capacity rather than going out to try and win it. We don't want to lose it, and we're always looking, we're probably looking sometimes around too many damn corners rather than just playing the game and not that occasion.
But it's, I said before the game, people were saying about, it's worth over 200 million.
Exactly.
And I was saying to people, it's really, you don't look at that. You shouldn't look at that as a player. You shouldn't look at that as a manager. You should just look, this is a game.
Yeah.
It's like a cup final that you're playing in. So don't look at them. Just look at, this is the same.
Yeah.
You go out at Wembley, you go out and play to the best of your ability. You want to win the game like everyone else. Maybe go out with a less fear factor, as it were, and don't even if I was a manager, I wouldn't even be mentioning 200 million. I'd be just mentioning, this is a game we're going to play, a game we want to win. And it's a game you want to go and put yourself in the, you know, I think they said there was something like 100 countries or something ridiculous were watching that game because of the how shall I put it, to get in the Premier League is a massive achievement nowadays. But you just got to go out and play. You know, to me, play, do the best of what you possibly can. At the end of the day, come off that pitch and say, I've given it my all. And if you're there, you're there. If you're not, you're not.
But the reality is that when you didn't fail, you got beat in the playoff final. You got beaten 2 playoff finals, and then you won your 3rd one, didn't you?
Yeah,
Leicester.
Went 3 years in a
now,
row. Yeah.
when you lost that 1st and 2nd one, obviously you was gutted, you were deflated. The team were. You picked the team back up, and you got them back in the game. How many of them players played in the 3rd one that played in the 2nd one?
No,
now, to Villa, an awful lot will change. Not because you wanted to change, but in Villa's case now, it's got to change because the amount of money that's in the damn game.
Yeah, but I think that's where people like me would use their experience and
exactly.
say, from day one, my first year as a footballer, Aston Villa in the 3rd division at the end of that season. There's a lot of people that need to sit down, sort it out, and get the momentum going back. And irrespective of it being a defeat, the most important thing is to be ready for the next season again. And it's the mentality side of it. And it is, you talk about my experience there at Leicester City. We played 2 league cup finals, two playoff finals, lost both of them. And I can still see myself sitting on the team bus going back after the first one. I can still see myself sitting on the team bus going back after the second one, sitting with John Gregory and Alan Evans. And then I can still see myself going to the third one and saying, we ain't losing today.
Yeah.
We are not losing today. So out of something which quite right now is still like so hard to take, there possibly is something good.
Exactly.
There possibly is something good. But that's about the manager and the club, you know, making sure that that mentality and that belief is still there. And that's what they've got to do. Because the third time we rocked up to Wembley 3 years in a row for a playoff final, there was no way we were going to lose that game. And yet, you know what, Derby were a better team than us.
Yeah.
But we just were so focused on something, I can't explain what it is, but when we left Wembley, when we started our pre-season for that season after, we were as tuned into what we needed to do as we could ever have been. And that was because we believed it. We'd convinced each other, and that's what has to go on inside the club now. Irrespective, you can't put that result right now. You can't change that result now. Now it's about what are we going to do. Don't care what the problems are. Problems only become a real problem if there isn't something you can do to fix it.
Exactly.
Most problems are fixable.
Yep.
So you have to have that mentality of, you know, if it's a problem you can't fix, well then that's not a problem. That's virtually a disaster. But if it's a problem, and it is a problem, it can be fixed. And I can relate to that again and recall to that saying, I did that 3 years in a row and I got there. Why? Because we believed in it, because we kept believing it, because we kept up with things. So whatever we changed, and I'd have to look back on it now because it ain't totally fresh in my head, but there were changes each particular year. There were changes that made us better, stronger, irrespective of whether I spent money or not. You know, I supposedly sold my best player to get two players. But those two players I brought in made the team better, even though I sold, and I remember selling Paul Kitson to Derby for 1 point something million.
Good player.
But I sold him because I needed to strengthen the team in other ways to help me get up, and it happened and it worked. And we beat Kitson he was in the Derby team that played against us. So, you know, we're all gutted. You're allowed to be gutted for a little bit.
Yeah, of course, sure.
But when the time is right, and you can't sit there moping and groping for very long. It's time to look at each other, straighten the eyes, make the decisions you need to make, and get right on with it again.
And this is what I'm saying about the experience, and you can't buy that experience. Like, you know, if I owned a football club, I would 100% have someone like you guys
people like
there, because I'd say, Brian, you know, okay, I own the club, I've got a lot of money, but what do I do? You've been there, you've done it. Do I get rid of Brucey? Do I keep with Brucey? Ultimately, it's my decision because I own the club. But, you know, you've been there, you got beat twice, but you come back, you kept coming back. A little bit of fine-tuning, a little bit of tweaking, but have faith. And football people understand football. And it's having faith with people. If they're the right persons, back them and keep on with them. Because you end up, if you don't know what you're doing, keep sacking managers. And where does it get you? There's no continuity. You have a team, you get up there, you get beat, right, change the whole team. No, you need to change bits, but not the whole team. You need people on side, getting the fans on side. Everybody's sore at the moment, but it's about getting back on that horse and winning that next game. And you only get that from experience and knowing what's round them corners.
Well, the other side of it is you've got Shrewsbury who've been to Wembley 5 times and lost every time, and yet they've lost again yesterday, haven't they?
Yeah.
And I know young Hursty. I think he's a terrific young manager, and I know that his mentality will be, well, after he's got that little bit of gutted feeling out in his stomach, I believe he will do a good job again next time round. But you know that's how it is, and that's how you have to be. So, are we gutted? Yes. Can we bounce back? Most certainly.
I know we are pushed for time. Have you guys got to go? Chris, have you got to go?
I don't know the 10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll go for 10, because there are the England. I do want to talk about England as well. Because, Pete, you had 8 caps for England, didn't you? 11, sorry. First, your debut against Brazil, 1981. Zico scored the winning goal. Great player. And Brian, sadly, you wore the number 15 and probably had about the same amount of minutes on the pitch. But a wonderful turn, you saw it coming, turned on the ball, got down to the byline, put one over, and David Johnson headed it. You know, I'm looking at England with the World Cup. I think that both of you guys should have had a hell of a lot more caps. And the fact that England didn't qualify for a World Cup until you, Peter, went there in 1982, being the first Aston Villa representative. I've got to say, no other Villa player had done that before you. But again, down to management, we had Don Revie and then we had Ron Greenwood. In my opinion, not the ideal choices. What's your thoughts about that?
What about the current situation?
Well, no, about that,
Well,
and then I want to talk about the current.
In my day, I mean,
Yeah.
I again, you look at players around you who were there, who were competing for your place, and there was some good players.
Yeah.
And I got selected on the back of playing really well at Wembley in the League Cup final, which was the year we got promoted back to the first division, and the year we won the League Cup final as a second division player. And I got selected for the England, the end of the season home internationals, and was sub in the second game against Wales. Came on and, as you say, helped score, helped create the goal. But then the next game was Scotland, and again that was a one where, you know, Don Revie said we're going for experience. And I've already alluded to the fact that sometimes you don't know how good people will react unless you throw them in. So I didn't play in the second game. Then I started the next season, got injured, and missed most of that season. And of course, my good friend and probably one of the finest players you've had at Birmingham, Trevor Francis, got in the England team, and Trevor really kept me out from there on in. So I have no complaints. But we had a great sort of relationship in terms of being rivals, but being portrayed as the new sort of breed around of the Midlands, of Trevor and myself. But I actually got in the England team before him, which I was pleased about. But in fairness, I haven't been injured and seeing Trevor in there. I mean, there was just, you know, and Tony Woodcock was around at the time who was playing really well.
Good player.
And I didn't have a very good season. I mean, it took me a long time to get over my first operation. So I really had dropped down the pecking order and never got back there. So from a personal point of view, I couldn't really complain. There was a great player keeping me out of the team. So, you know, it was one of those situations. If I'd kept fit, I might have kept Trevor out. I don't know. So I've no complaints. But, you know, I mean, I think, again, there was no... I look back at how the England team prepared when I was there, and I just look and think, wow, what, you know, we used to play, like, it was a crazy golf on a night that we used to play putting practice on it, and I was sitting there thinking, this is England, and we're like playing putting, you know, with the golf ball in it, and I'm like, but all those things stick in my mind, and I remember even at that age, even though I was just a kid in there, I'm thinking, what are we doing this for? You know, I don't know. I just learned a lot of things, not what to do again from that as well. So
I must admit, Alan Hudson told me all about them get-togethers in England and playing crazy. Got him and Bawley and one or two others used to go for a few sherbets. Playing crazy golf.
It would drive you to that, to be honest.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it was so. But that's how it was in those days, you know. Thankfully, and looking at it now and seeing how they are and seeing Gareth move things on, I think it's brilliant, really.
And again, a player that you brought to Villa. But Pete, your debut 81, so, you know, another era. Don had gone, and it was Ron Greenwood that took that.
It was, yeah.
How come Don didn't pick you? Because, I mean, you know, you were firing in goals left, right and centre. And
I think there was a certain manager that at the time that I don't think anyone from Nottingham Forest would get into the team, because Don Revie was the manager, and as we know, there was a bit of conflict between a certain two managers. So there was no way that I was going to. And probably I was playing my best football when I was at Forest. You know, I'd been leading goal scorer for 2 seasons. We won the championship, and everyone was saying at the time, you know, why is he not in the team playing at the time? And it wasn't until I come to Villa and we won the championship that Ron Saunders done his normal little bit of a called you in the office and said, how would you fancy playing another game? And then I thought we were playing a testimonial somewhere or other, and he said, but I've insisted that you play up front with Kevin Keegan. So I was like, oh. And then he said it was England versus Brazil, and I was like, no, Brazil. And it was funny because I remember making my debut, and it was like I was like a 16-year-old kid, couldn't keep the ball. I kept from giving the ball away for the first 15, 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden it kicked into my brain and said, just relax and play your game the way you can play. And really should have scored in the last probably 10 minutes, hit the post on the far side. But it was great. I mean, I always remember the biggest thing that I was thinking, I really want to keep my shirt. But I really want to get a Brazilian shirt. You know? I was thinking, flipping hell. And then I think it was Ray Wilkins, actually, Butch Wilkins, he said to me, he said, well, take that shirt off at half time and put that other shirt. What other shirt? He said, there's another shirt there. And I was like, oh. So, of course, I ended up getting a Brazil shirt and having my own shirt. So I kept my shirt that I made my debut in and then swapped the shirt. But it was funny because we went to the World Cup in '82. Never lost a game.
Yeah.
Had I felt a team that could win the World Cup.
So did I.
Kevin got injured. Trevor Brooken got injured. We played, and I think this is again what we talk about sometimes about a manager. We were playing against the Germans, who knew what they had to do. They knew they just had to draw, and they were through to the next round. We knew we had to win, and I think that he didn't go for it.
Yeah,
I think he could have gone for it, and he didn't. That was the first game of all the games that I wasn't on the bench, which I probably should have been on the bench because we could have maybe upset the Germans at the back. And we didn't go to the next stages, and I thought that we were capable. We had the players in the team that was capable of winning that World Cup and certainly beating the Germans. And I think it was a fear factor by the manager that we didn't get through in the end.
Often is with England. How far do you think England can go in this World Cup?
I think he's got some very good youngsters coming through. I think he's got some. He's got players in the side that can score goals. I think it's finding the way that he wants to play.
Yeah.
I think it is important that the midfield players that he picks that we have this thing now about having Dyer or having someone in front of the back four. But I think that's okay. I don't mind that.
If as long
as you've got another two who are going to be direct and getting. And I think Dele Alli is that type of player that can get forward and get into situations like that. I think with international football, you have to study the opposition a little bit more, and you have to you don't pick a team and say we'll play this team week in, week out. I think you've got to look at it and think we need to change that maybe. So I think international level is a different ball game from just playing in the league.
The one ingredient I just feel that we're missing is that creativity in midfield. I would have took Jack Wilshere. I think he can open up defences. He's the kind of player that invites a challenge and just nicks it and then puts that ball through to an inside forward or a forward. If he's not going to go, which he isn't, I was looking at Shelvey because I think he can pass a ball. And if he wasn't going to take either of them two, I would have took that boy at Villa, Grealish. I think he's an absolutely fine football player. I think he's the best football player out of the Premier League. And I think that kid is going to go all the way to the top. And I mean, on Birmingham City sites, I've got hammered by sticking up for Grealish and saying I just think he's a great player. I think he's got everything in his game. He reminds me of a matador when he invites that ball to come in and he's showing him the ball, he moves it quickly and then he sends it, and he can dictate the pace of the game as well. I think he's a tremendous player.
Yeah, I think from Jack's point of view, in fairness to him, this is the first season he's been in a team that's been competitive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I think that has probably slowed this maturity that we've seen of him this season. Is one which, and I remember saying to Keith Winus early in the season, we might see more of Jack now because we're a more competitive team. I mean, bear in mind, his last 5 years he's been down the bottom end of the. He's been in a Premier League team that struggled. Start of last season, he was in and out of a Championship team that struggled. He got injured early this season, which I thought might slow him down again. Yeah. But it's the first time he's been in a team that's been really competitive. Outside of the little run they had to get into the FA Cup final a couple of years, where he was different class in the semi-final against Liverpool. So we've always known it was there, but this is the first period of 20 games or more, 25 games maybe. So I'm trying to think. He missed quite a few, didn't he? with
Yeah,
his
he did.
injury?
Yeah.
So, but he has proven what he's about. Perhaps it's just a little bit late to have proven it, but he has genuinely got. He's found and began to show everything that everybody thought of him, and I think that's terrific. He is probably a little bit unlucky to be out of it, but I think I think Gareth has been really brave with his group.
Yeah.
I think I like the fact that he's picked people who are in form, whether they're young or and I think that's been brave, and I genuinely think. I think we'll do well. I think we'll, and at the end of the day, what is doing well? I mean, it's hard to say. I think they're capable. If they could maximise everything they've got, I've always felt we should do better in these competitions. I've always felt when I look at the team, but there is this modern psychology of that. We've played too many competitive games in a season and stuff like that. Perhaps these younger lads might not worry about it so much, and the manager seems to be. He seems to have warmed to this role to me.
Yeah.
And I think he's matured. I mean, he is a mature man now, in fairness to him. But when I signed him, there was something different about him. When we first played him as a centre back, because we bought him as a holding midfield player, we just went the three. I can remember John, Gregor Allen, and myself standing at the sideline going, "Oh, we've just found our third centre back here." I haven't said that. He was playing alongside Hugo Ekiog and Paul McGrath.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that.
I could have probably played with him too.
I tell you, I mean, it was a hell of a combination. I mean, we were blessed with that. But I'm so pleased for Gareth.
Yeah.
Because he had his club management thing, which didn't go so well for him. But I think he's warmed to this role. He's learnt his role through his under-23 and business and stuff like that. And I hope very much so that he'll do well, and I think we've got enough talent in there to give anybody a game.
Do you keep in touch? Does he phone you up? Gaffer? How you doing?
No. I'm not very good at networking. He'll tell
If
me.
I was Gareth, I'd be phoning you. I'd say, Gaffer,
I've
just go and have a drink.
Yeah, but I've seen Gareth occasionally, and we always speak. He knows that I think a lot of him, and I think he's good enough to get on with these. But no, I'm not the greatest in the world with keeping in touch with people, and I've always just done my own thing in my life, me, and he's lucky. I've always been, I'm an individual.
See, that's why I'm saying you two are ideal combination because you're like the kind of quiet, and that's why you could have played together. You got the attributes that you've got. Peter's got the others, and together you complement each other. And I think you'd be ideal because there's no one with a bigger personality than Withe.
Exactly.
How do you think they'll go, Pete? And what would you have done with the fine tuning?
I think that it's always been, and this is probably one of the things that annoy me as well, is that managers, because I'm onto psychology, so I do psychology, and psychology to me, if I keep telling you you're rubbish, you're going to be rubbish.
Yeah, correct.
If I keep telling you you've played too many games, you're going to believe you've played too many games. So if you go in with this thing, and I've listened to a few people saying, like Sven Gordon Edison saying, they'll be too tired, they'll be this, that.
Yeah.
I'd be going in and saying, take no notice of him. We're mentally strong enough now. We can play as many games. And I think Brian's right. With younger players sometimes have this no fear factor. Yeah. They're thinking, I want to play. And I think a lot of the younger players now do get rather annoyed about being, not being in the team. So that's a good thing. I think that is always a good thing. I would rather than be banging on my door saying, why aren't I playing, than just sitting to the wayside and just saying, I don't manage it. So I think they've probably, to get out of the group, I think is, okay, we know the Belgium game, but I think all of the games are going to be tough. They're always tough because you think to yourself, whoever you play, if you underestimate anyone you play, you're going to get dumped on your backside. So I think that to get through the group, that'd be great, and then just take it as it comes then. And I think that the problem that we've had with our managers is that if Brian Clough would have been an England manager, we would have won a trophy. Yeah, for sure. I guarantee he would have won a trophy because he wouldn't have given two. if you would have been 16 years old or
Yeah.
40 years old, he would pick a team that's going to win the game or win a tournament or win something. And I think that you've got to be, you know, as a national coach, you've got to be a little bit bold in your approach.
Boys, sadly, we've run out of time. I could sit here.
What about his book?
Well, yeah, let's talk about your book. It is coming out, because what I want to do is I want to get you back in again.
Yep.
You know, 'cause, like, we just can't cover everything, because your book's doing great. I mean, you got the gaffer Stevie, he's playing a blinder, and your book is coming out round about your birthday, which is November. It's same 2 days after my birthday.
Yeah.
You're the 25th, I'm the 23rd.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get it out. I mean, there's just that much there that you sometimes keep going reading over bits that are set up now, and you look back and think, no, I've got to put that in. I've got to put that in. I've got to put that in, and I've got to do this. And then on top of that, there's 10 clubs that I've managed.
Yeah.
And you know, so there's just it's amazing when you sit down and start at it and think, wow, you know.
How far down the road have you got, Brian? Is
I've
it?
done
Are
quite
you writing it with Simon?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many chapters?
Again, I mean, I think at the moment that we're probably, I would say, we're a good third of the way down the line, possibly closing in on half the way down the line. But again, you know, some people have got like photographic memories. I don't. I need pockets opening in my brain, because even someone will speak to me and go, what about so and it opens a pocket in my brain. I go, oh crikey, I remember this. But me sitting down by myself, which I do a lot of the time, it's sometimes quite difficult to hit.
Is Simon doing that with you?
No, I do that with people. I've been in touch with lots of people who I know. You know, people who are, again, you know, 3 years as a youth coach at Middlesbrough, and some of the lads who came through there, and some of the stories that they were saying. Can you remember that day you took us to paint your house? And I'm going, don't tell them people that. You go, so instead of training, you know, I said, come on, you're painting my house today, you lot. So things like that.
Yeah.
And I've gone, yeah, crikey, yeah, I remember that. So. So there's just so many things, you know, there's just so many roles. And I've said 900 games as a manager in 6 leagues, 6 years or 7 years on top of that as a youth team coach, you know, and all sorts of things. And then working in the club shop like I did for a year, and there's a million things, you know, and going off to do my television. There's a load of things that I need to get down, and then probably have to dilute it a bit, to be honest.
Have you got eating the chips in the old end as well?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How about Santos? Have you got that going
yeah,
down?
there's a bit on that as well. Yeah,
So
I've actually got Pele's autograph on a piece of headed paper, so I've got that. So
this is why I want to get you back.
Yeah.
To talk a lot more about it, because we've just scratched the surface. I want to know about your motorbikes, because you love motorbikes, don't you? I want to know about, because you're the last Villa manager to win a cup, and you stayed in the hotel in London that you wanted to stay in. You had 3 police bikes as well. You were the last Villa manager to beat Manchester United when someone says they won't win nothing with kids. So there's loads and loads of stuff. Vic Crow, I mean, Peter had a dream with Vic, didn't you? You know, and you had the call in, and didn't you play for Portland Timbers? Was it with Vic Crow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my where I thought it broke the dream.
Yeah.
Because he was the manager at the
Of
time.
Portland Timbers? Of Aston Villa, that's right.
When I dreamt about playing for Aston Villa.
Yeah.
And he was the manager. So when he asked me to play at Portland, I thought to myself, that's broke the dream.
And then from Portland, you had a nightmare because you went to play for Willie Bell.
Well, I didn't. I went to play for Freddie Goodwin. He was still
was
there.
it Freddie still the gaffer?
Freddie was the gaffer when I got stuck in America. That was the problem.
See, that was my early memories of Birmingham. Sack the board, Goodwin out, and the FA, the youth game, because I want to talk more in depth about that. 20,000 watching you and Trevor go toe to toe. And for people that, you know, don't know the football, for like the young kids coming into the game, you were the darling of the Holt End. I mean, you were every inch for Villa as what Trevor was to Birmingham. It was like Superboy and Wonderboy. Brian Little versus Trevor Francis. And, you know, you had the career that lasted at Aston Villa, a one-club man. And then, you know, Jim was going to buy you at Birmingham, where you met him in a bar in Portugal. I want to talk about that as well. You know, there's just so many things, and we just don't have enough time. But are you doing any Q&As and stuff? How are you going to be promoting the books? You got the best promoter on the planet in
Once
Stevie.
he's off with it, I mean, we've got
We've got
time for
loads.
that. We'll
Yeah,
get
we've
plenty of
got
time
loads.
to do that.
So if ever you need a third man to, like, you know,
Come
get
on
the
then.
questions and
Brilliant.
stuff,
There
I'll
you
be
are.
there.
There you are.
I'm
You know,
already organised
Yeah.
with it.
There
So
you
I'll be there. I'm sure that we can have
Yeah.
a chat, make a decent few evenings, earn you boys a few quid. Have you got with his book as well for me to you signed one?
Yes.
Brilliant. So, I mean, guys, till we
Okay.
reconvene in a few months' time, possibly, during the World Cup, after the World Up, we'll see. They're up the villa and keep right on. That's PC, ain't it? Cheers, guys.